All right, we're on. And so this is part two of our Refined Geekery year-end discussion. The last segment that we did, we discussed games, or sorry, not games, movies, and what we thought were the pleasant surprises and the disappointments in movies in 2013. And today we're going to concentrate on games. Mike and I are both passionate gamers and have been for many years, decades, and so we look forward to wrapping up 2013. We're going to do the same framework this time, looking at disappointments and what was the unexpected and pleasant surprises of the year. We're going to be putting up best of lists later on the website refinedgeekery.com, but this year, or for this discussion, we're just going to focus on the things that stood out rather than what we put as like the top games. But yeah, anything else you want to add, Mike?
Hi, Mike. This is Tom.
Yes. Yes. So yes, that's Mike. I'm Tom. And what are you drinking there, Mike?
Decaf Maxwell House for my Tassimo. Nothing too exciting.
I've got a Mill Street coffee porter.
Oh, right on.
Very delicious.
I had their vanilla stout yesterday, and it was fantastic.
Yeah. Oh, it's delicious. It's like dropping a vanilla ice cream into a beer.
Yeah, it's like a beer float. It's fantastic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So let's just start off. Let's start off with the disappointment, because let's get the negative stuff out of the way.
All right.
What were the disappointing elements of gaming in 2013 for you?
Okay, so when I was thinking about this, I looked at games that I played in 2013. I'm not 100% sure of the release dates, but for me, probably my biggest disappointment was Black Ops 2. Is that a 2013 game?
That was a 2012 game.
All right, well.
But no, it was incredibly disappointing.
Yeah, see, and then, I guess because Call of Duty Ghosts came out 2013, but
yeah.
We'll call that a disappointment because I basically left the franchise. I had enough. That was it for me.
Yeah.
So Black Ops 2 sort of ruined Call of Duty Ghosts and that whole franchise for me. I was just kind of done with it. And I don't know. I just felt the single player was... I'm one of those guys that played Black Ops 4, the single player. I enjoyed it, and I loved the multiplayer too. It was pretty good. But I just found the multiplayer grindy and not really much new to it. And I found the single player absolutely terrible with the forced RTS elements.
Yeah. You know what? I mean, it's funny because going into Black Ops 2, there was a lot of talk about the formula growing stale with Call of Duty, and this was a big leap for them trying to change up that tired formula. But it really, to me, it failed.
Yeah.
It was, sure, it was bold for them to try to work RTS elements, but so I guess you could argue it was bold for the Assassin's Creed franchise to try to do that with Assassin's Creed Revelations, and that was terrible.
Yeah.
It's just, it wasn't a complementary element, and the fact that it forced you, if you wanted the good ending, you had to do these missions that really are not why people come into a Call of Duty game.
Yeah, yeah.
No, I totally agree.
And for the multiplayer, I didn't find anything interesting or useful. So for me, 2013 is the year I stopped playing Call of Duty. Why don't we put it at that in terms of disappointments for me?
Yeah. So I'm curious, because I did play all those, whether I liked them or not. Didn't. And so I got the quote-unquote good ending. What happens if you don't do those?
It was a total nonsensical ending. I played it on better.
Everybody dies.
No, because I did enough of the things in the quests or in the missions to get some of the good stuff and not enough in others to get some of the bad stuff. So it was totally nonsensical. There were some good things, some bad things, and it was cut terribly. So I got like a mix somewhere in between the good and the bad endings.
Yeah.
And again, Call of Duty isn't even really about the single player. It was just the multiplayer wasn't anything more than the previous Call of Duty games that got me to buy, and the single player was just dreadful, so it was just enough. I fatigued on the multiplayer and hated the single player.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to say my biggest disappointment, and it was a real disappointment because I've loved this franchise from the beginning, but the Gears of War Judgment
Yeah.
was just, I mean, once again, knowing it's a sequel, they tried to experiment with the formula. They had this, it was uh, Baird and Cole are like the focus of the story this time. Marcus Phoenix isn't in it. And they're in front of this tribunal because they launched a missile that they weren't supposed to launch. And so they're retelling the events that led to this moment where they're all, before this court. And they have these things on the wall where, depending on whether you activate them or not, it'll change the story as it's being told. Like, all of a sudden there'll be this incredible fog that makes it so you can't see any of the enemies, and the narration, whoever's talking in front of this tribunal at the time, will say, and then this incredible fog rolled in and we couldn't see the enemies before us. But it turns it into, there's the narrative all of a sudden loses any of its cohesive elements and it becomes so gamey.
Yeah.
And when you break Gears of War down to its gaminess, it's not all that complex or interesting.
Yeah.
It's really just bad guy arenas where you're constantly shooting, and they throw these little challenges that try to get this done in this set period of time, and you'll get more stars. It becomes kind of like an Angry Birds.
Yeah.
And that's not how I want to play Gears of War. Gears of War has never had a complex story, but I like to chew on the scenery. I like to embrace the visual. I mean, it's always been like the benchmark of what the Unreal Engine can do, and you just don't have any time to do all of that because instead you're focused on these silly little challenges so that you can get stars. 3 stars, 2 stars.
Are they actually?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're stars. I can't remember. Maybe they're cog medals or something.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure they're
Stars.
And it's like you're playing angry Gears of War, or well, Gears of Birds or something. It's really really silly.
Well, and I think a lot of games this year, and even just going forward with a lot of games, the challenge isn't coming from the gameplay anymore. There's some great games where it does. I just started playing Splinter Cell, and I find the challenge actually inherent in the actual gameplay, which makes for a good game. It's an intelligent game, and you can approach it in different ways, and that's where the challenge comes from. Where challenge comes from these ridiculous, arbitrary sort of modifiers, that's when it really loses interest for me.
Yeah, and I mean, like, what I love about where gaming is going is it's becoming like a narrative force. It's another way of telling stories. And while gameplay, I think, is incredibly important, I think it's the games that marry the two elements as best possible that stand out. And when you strip a game of all of its narrative focus, well then that's not what I want in a console game. Like, I'm happy to play like some finger candy like Candy Crush or another Angry Birds or Cut the Rope or something like that on like mobile devices. But on a console, I really want that narrative experience now.
Yeah.
And it's hard to play games that don't have that.
Well, and you're exactly right. And when you mentioned Gears of War Judgment, there's a lot of games this year that I just didn't even pick up because they look disappointing to me. And Gears of War Judgment was one of them, and Batman Arkham Origins was another one for me as well. I've never played it. I can't comment on it, but I had absolutely no desire to play it. So that's kind of a disappointment to me because I loved Arkham Asylum, Arkham City. Okay, fine.
Was it Arkham City that kind of, because I mean, like, going into it, like, okay, so I played it and I actually just finished it over this Christmas holiday, and you know what? Like, the story is surprisingly good.
Mm-hmm.
There are elements that share too much with Arkham City. They reuse the city assets, like copy and paste basically, and add some snow. And like, it's funny because in Arkham City you could I mean, the fact that there are enemies everywhere. Well, it was a prison. There's supposed to be enemies everywhere. Well, in Arkham Origins, it's actually Gotham City. It's not, you know, a penitentiary, a huge giant sandbox. But there's no life whatsoever outside of enemies that you have to fight. And the whole thing is that there's a giant snowstorm, and so they have a curfew, and people aren't allowed outside on Christmas Eve. And it's a stupid premise, but it's like the whole reason is because that way they can just basically reuse the assets that they used in Arkham City. But the story itself is surprisingly good. Surprisingly good. I really liked it, and I'd say it's almost on par with at least the story basis of Arkham City. I was actually I was gonna put that in one of my surprises, but I get what you're saying, and like another one was God of War Ascension. I had no longing to play that game whatsoever.
Yeah.
There's something about this year with like games that had traditionally had like a number beside it, instead having like the colon and like the subtitle.
Yeah.
Crappy word like crappy words like ascension and judgment, and like what Assassin's Creed has been doing with like Revelations and Brotherhood, and like let's just throw random adjectives.
I think the adjective is just a placeholder for filler, and I think a lot of that's what these games became. Is just a God of War filler edition, Gears of War filler edition, just cashing out on the brand, and that's pretty much it.
But I think and they were all reviewed poorly, and they didn't sell well. So I mean, like I hope like Sony with the God of War franchise, Ubisoft with Assassin's Creed, Epic and Microsoft with Gears of War. Like I hope they learn from these things. That you can't just throw a little filler like to yes, it satiates a little bit of that appetite, but it just reeks of trying to make as much money from a franchise as possible without having to put a huge amount of money into it to make it worthwhile.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. So that's sort of where I'm at. There's a lot of games I just didn't pick up because they weren't worth my. I perceived them not to be worth my money. Batman was one of them. I hope I'm wrong about that, and I'll probably buy it when it's on sale.
I'll let you know it.
But there's a lot of games I just have less and less time. So if they didn't immediately appeal to me or at least look interesting, then I just didn't bother. So I struggled to come up with some disappointments of the year, not because there aren't disappointing games, but just because I didn't give them the time.
Yeah, well, and like when I make my best of, it's funny. Like there's a bunch of games that I'm going to have to, they're not making it not because I don't think they're worthy or not, but because I just had no interest in playing them. Call of Duty Ghosts is one, Battlefield 4. I have Assassin's Creed 4 waiting for me, but after Assassin's Creed 3, I really had like I don't know. I'm very very suspicious going into it because to tell you the truth, like the sailing aspect of it, which it's a pirate game. That's pretty much what they're marketing.
Yeah, it's a pirate
game. The aspect in Assassin's Creed 3, I really didn't enjoy that much. So
yeah. Okay, we can talk about that for surprises because that was a surprise for me. A lot of folks who came off of Assassin's Creed 3 just thought they had completely lampooned the entire series.
Yeah.
Going into 4, I'm not a big Assassin's Creed player. I think the last one I played was 2.
Yeah.
And I jumped into this one, not even again borrowing the 3 because I didn't really have any interest. And I love this game, with a caveat which we can talk about. But I did enjoy this game. It was a surprise for me.
Yeah. Okay. And well then, I think going into surprises then, to me, I'm gonna start off with like the big surprises for me came from downloadable content. Both brothers. Tale of Two Sons, which comes from Starbreeze, which is hilarious that it's this, gut-wrenching, narrative experience, downloadable game. It's only about 4 hours long, but it goes like you're so drawn into the world that you can't stop playing it for those 4 hours. and yet it's coming from the team that brought you, Riddick and Darkness.
Riddick was a great game. I
Oh,
love
they're
Riddick.
great. They're great games, but they're like M-rated, violent,
Oh, brutally violent.
really
Yeah.
violent games. And like the Darkness, you have like demon arms that rip hearts out of people, and here's this game about two brothers who are just on a journey to save their dying father. It's really interesting, but it's great. Like that'll make my top list, and it was a huge surprise. I loved it. And then the other one is Wolf Among Us. I just played the first episode of that, and just blown
Really?
away by how beautiful and how elegant, and the gameplay. The gameplay in Walking Dead was always somewhat clumsy when it wasn't, just the point and click stuff. Like whenever there was actually moments of action, it felt like they never really could settle on a formula for action. But in Wolf Among Us, like the action is really good. Like they do a great job with it.
Great.
What about you?
Okay. I mentioned Assassin's Creed, and that was a big surprise for me because I only played that game because I got it free from Best Buy on some insane promotion they had where we lined up for 3 hours.
Yeah.
I had written off the series; it had no interest in it for me. The things I liked about it, that I surprisingly liked about it, the environments were beautiful. It was fun. It was upbeat. It was hilarious, and not hilarious. It was upbeat. It was bright, colorful. It wasn't just somber and moody and ridiculous. Uh, I enjoyed that. I love the pirate stuff. I love the ship battles. I loved everything about it except the Assassin's Creediness of it. The
Yeah.
completely nonsensical collectibles for no good reason were you will ruin the game if you try and collect everything. In fact, I encourage you if you play it to not even bother collecting things. Um, that part almost breaks the game. If
Yeah.
you ignore the collectibles because they don't do anything for you, it's a phenomenal game. It's a lot of fun. It's really cohesive and well acted, well narrated. Just a good package altogether.
Are there any eavesdrop missions? Because I cannot stand those in every Assassin's Creed game.
Well, when I say the Assassin's Creediness, Rex, is the bad part of it, that's exactly what I mean.
Yeah.
I loved the first 3/4 of the game, but you get to a certain point and it does follow that formula of follow, don't get detected, eavesdrop, and then some sort of fight. And
Yeah.
when you have enough of those, you just plow through the story and you get back to the pirate stuff.
Yeah.
That's the real fun part of it. If you can forget having to climb up these towers for no reason to synchronize things and doing all this Assassin's Creedy stuff that doesn't really even need to be there.
Yeah.
Other stuff, the pirate stuff, is a ton of fun, and I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the challenge of it.
How are there even towers in like like? I don't know. I guess when I think of the Caribbean, I mean, I don't think of huge, tall buildings. There's the odd church with a spire, I suppose, that could be large, but it's not like, back when the games took place in Istanbul and, other places in the Middle East where you had to stand on top of these giant monoliths. Uh, like, are you standing on top of trees and that's what you're synchronizing?
No, yes and no. It is. The environments are really well done. The water looks beautiful. The environments are varied enough that you feel that there is some variety and you're not just playing the same city over and over again, which I found in some of the older ones.
Yeah. There
are cities. It's all in the Caribbean, so you do get these kind of monastic sort of Christian churches, and then you get some of the temples, and it's well done and it's subtle, but the fact that you have to do this kind of Assassin's Creedy stuff doesn't add to the story in any way. It doesn't add to the gameplay in any way. In fact, I ran through that stuff as fast as possible to get to some of the side stuff.
And you know what? Like what you say about, the color and, the humor that's injected in. Like I think, especially from the humor standpoint, I think that is taken from the amount of criticism that came with Assassin's Creed 3, where it's a shame because I mean it was a Native American character, which you never get in video games, but they just made him like the driest character ever, like so serious. There's never anything fun about the guy whatsoever.
Yeah.
So I think they listen to people, which is a good thing.
Yeah, and it's just a more vibrant game, and I think they just made the characters more fun and just the whole game more approachable. They don't take themselves as seriously as they appeared to in the last one, which I didn't play.
Yeah.
So that's a big surprise for me. I had two others that I played this year that didn't come out this year that I love that were completely blew me out of the water in terms of surprise. I got Witcher 2. I don't know if you mentioned that to me.
Yeah, well, they had it for free with
Yeah,
the Games with Gold program this year. Yeah, I think it came out like 2 years ago, but
it's not a
still,
new game, but
yeah,
man, I had never played a Witcher franchise. I generally don't like those kind of RPG games, and I
cool.
love that game. It was really fun, and it was interesting in terms of the actual story progression. It wasn't what I really liked about it quickly was that it wasn't good choice versus evil choice. You would just make choices, and the environment would respond to that.
There's a
It was really
subtleness.
organic,
Yeah.
really well told, really good story. And another one was XCOM. I had never played anything like that, maybe or at least not in 10 years, and I really enjoyed XCOM. That surprised me as well.
Did you get the additional content that came out this like a couple months ago? I think it was
No,
Enemy Within.
I just
I think-
played Enemy Within. Just came out with it, kind of revamps the original story with some cool mech stuff. Enemy Unknown, which was the original, which is old, it's not new. I
yeah,
picked up this year for 50% off because what the heck? Because people talked about it, and I loved it. I really enjoyed it.
nice. Yeah, it's kind of I know it's a dark mark on my gaming, but I haven't played that yet. And I probably should. And it's I love like turn-based strategy games. Like I was a huge Civ fan, and to move into like the really cool sci-fi stuff. I never played the original PC game, but I've always been interested in that idea. Especially like I love the concept of permadeath, and here are these characters that you build, and once they're gone. Actually, talking about permadeath, and another game that really stood out for me this year. I loved it was crap. It was a zombie game. It was
State
next
of Decay.
State of Decay. So good. I loved it. It was glitchy as hell.
Yeah,
There was so many bugs, but it was like the perfect zombie simulator. And there are moments in this game that are so tense that when you're trying to fight through this mob, and you lose your character, and you realize that, oh my god, my bag of stuff is now surrounded by this massive horde of zombies, and there's no way that I can get in there to get it because I'm just not strong enough. I can't do it. And you lose so much every time one of your character dies. It's
yeah.
painful. And I loved it. I thought it was a great game. And once again, a downloadable game. Like this year, I felt like I was playing. I felt like the big budget games were just not hitting, home runs for me. It was the smaller stuff, the DLC. That said, I mean, there were the three big games this year that like have made it so I cannot choose a favorite game this year. Obviously, are Last of Us, BioShock Infinite, and Grand Theft Auto 5. Like those three games. When I'm talking about the marriage of narrative and gameplay, like those three games, BioShock maybe less on the gameplay side, but moving the genre forward as a narrative force, like I, those are some of my favorite games of this entire generation, and they all came out this year, which I'm super happy and excited about. I love it.
And that's a good sign too, because I mean, at this point in this generation, it should be the best games. I mean, they know the hardware the best. They've had all this time to play, and
Yeah.
having those games really did speak well for the kind of wrapping up the generation.
And they're while BioShock and Grand Theft Auto are sequels, they come from franchises where it's not every year or 2 years we have to throw out a new one. Which I mean, like I am more. It's like with Splinter Cell. We haven't had a Splinter Cell game since Conviction, which came out in like 2010 maybe.
I think so.
And
Yeah.
so I was more than happy to have another Splinter Cell game and really got into it. I really enjoyed it. I'm more than happy to play sequels when it's not this franchise where I feel like they're just churning it out like a machine.
Yeah,
I
and
don't
I
know.
think you mentioned to me, I've never played it, that a surprise for you was the Tomb Raider as well.
Yeah. Oh no. Then once again, like Tomb Raider blew me away. I don't think I was so much surprised by that because like every video they showed going into that just sort of spoke to me. Like the mechanics, the gameplay is so well done. The acting is great, uh, except for some of the side characters. Um, Beautiful looking game. I can't. They're releasing a next generation version of it, and when I do upgrade, that may be a game where I buy a second time for a next generation upgrade, just because it is one of the most beautiful games I've played on this generation, and it pushed that hardware to the max. So I'd love to see what, let's just open up. Let's get that hair bobbing. Let's see every single thread of hair.
And that's a lot from the games you were just mentioning too. I mean, in terms of BioShock and Last of Us both looking like amazing games.
Yeah, I'm just. It was a great game. Or it was a great year for visuals. I think we reached benchmarks with where these consoles can go. And you know what? Like, it's amazing how well at this point the 360 has kept up with the PS3. I think on a visual level. I don't know whether the 360 could ever do Last of Us visuals, but I mean, playing BioShock Infinite on it, playing GTA 5, playing Tomb Raider, like, it is still, like, it's a workhorse. Like, it pushes the envelope visually, and I was impressed by it this year.
Yeah, they both made it to the end. I saw that with the Wii or even the Wii U. Those sort of trickled off, so it was nice to see Microsoft and Sony really finish strong with both their consoles. I think that's a good sign for things to come.
It's kind of sad looking at the state of the Wii U right now.
Yeah, they are starting to release some games that something, I don't know. I got nothing good to say.
I mean, like, and I'm interested to play it. Like, the new Mario game has gotten great reviews. I will admit that it's not on my list because I don't have a Wii U. I felt no need to buy one.
I saw them on sale at Target for Black Friday, and even at a sale price, I just wasn't interested. I'm really starting to be more and more selective with my time and for games.
Yeah.
I think this year was a good year to separate franchises that are moving forward with their games, like things like Splinter Cell and Tomb Raider that are really trying to, even Grand Theft Auto, where they're trying to be innovative with when they go forward, versus iterative type games that are just doing season after season after season. And I think the consumers are finally responding to that in terms of some of those games. And I hope that it does push some of these big developers and franchises to actually move forward and give us something interesting.
Is there a magic price point where you think you will buy a Wii U?
I don't know. It's not even cost now. It's the value of time, I think.
Or is there a game, like, if they come out with a legitimate 3D Zelda game, will that be enough to get you to buy the machine?
Less and less so. I did that with the Wii, and I enjoyed the first party franchises they released, and it's been sitting in a box in my basement. So, I mean, I don't think it's worth it enough. I'll be happy to borrow a Wii U from a friend who maybe wants to buy one, but I don't think it's going to be something I own unless something really compelling comes out. I don't see that. I think Zombie U is probably the closest compelling reason to get one, and they didn't do well. There's not enough to, other than the first party that's interested in this platform.
Yeah. Well, it's even like, so everybody's clamoring and like crying out for a Zelda game. And what's the Zelda game they announced? It's like a Dynasty Warriors Zelda hybrid.
Yeah, I think it's called Hyrule Warriors.
Hyrule Warriors or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Just not interested. I'm sorry.
What a horrible like nut shot to everybody who's a Nintendo fan.
Yeah, let's take away a fantastic story and just give you hack and slash.
Yeah.
The last thing anyone wants on a Wii. So it's just not having any appeal to me. Fortunately, it's not that I want Nintendo to do poorly. In fact, I would rather a third party come in here and try and do more innovative things to really push Sony and Microsoft, who seem to be converging right now.
The Steam box.
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe that's my biggest disappointment, Wii U. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's not something I've even touched, so I can't even comment on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, those were the surprises and disappointments for me. I do have some different ones in terms of my best of. So that we'll put those up on the website as soon as humanly possible.
Yeah. I think we hit everything. And it's funny, like, after what you said, I kind of want to play Assassin's Creed 4 now. I want to give it a chance. I was just so bummed after Assassin's Creed 3. I don't know what it... Well, no, I know exactly what it was. I thought it was this joyless experience, and so it's nice to hear that this one actually is like a really fun game, which I really feel like it hasn't, the franchise hasn't had since 2, maybe maybe Brotherhood. I enjoyed elements of Brotherhood, but 2 was the last time I really thought I had fun with an Assassin's Creed game.
Yep. So I say check that out. Don't do collectibles. And one other game I wanted to mention that I played this year, I don't think you have, but I've been bugging you to is Dark Souls, which is another big surprise for me because everything I heard I thought I'd hate it.
Yeah.
My buddy Big Mike gave it to me and made me play it, and I curse him to this day for that. It's it's the most frustrating, most rewarding game I played in a while, so I enjoyed that too.
Sequel comes out next year?
Yes, it does. And same with Witcher 3 comes out, and some games that I gave a chance this year. I left behind some big franchises, gave some new ones a chance, and I'm happy I did.
Okay, well, I think that's it for today then. And once again, we want to wish everybody a happy New Year. I hope you all had a wonderful Christmas. And Mike, I will talk to you later.
Yep, talk to you there. Good night.
Have a good night.